Many people dream of buying real estate and retiring to an exotic Caribbean island. So today we're going to talk to someone who's done just that. But first, I'm talking to people across North America about their home buying experience for a research project. So if you'd like to participate, click the link below and schedule a time to chat. Today I have Jeff Moore of the Retirementality with us, and he retired early, bought a house in Puerto Rico, is renovating it through COVID, and we're going to hear all about that today. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
All right, well, let's just dive right in. Tell me about your basic story. Like, how did you come to retire early, and how did you end up picking Puerto Rico as a place to buy and renovate property?
I'll try to make it short, but I'll have to go back a little bit. I don't know if I can even claim I'm retired early at this point. I feel like I have about 7 jobs. But I took the last year off. The way that we ended up in the Caribbean, I'm married to a Spanish lady from Spain, and she kind of came home frustrated from work one day, and she was like, I never thought I would be in the US for 10 years. My job isn't challenging me anymore. She said, I need to change the scenery. And I was like, well, you've let me do enough crazy things over the years. I guess it's your turn. So she just started putting out resumes, and she got a job in St. Thomas, and we basically just moved here sight unseen.
Wait, what did she do that she
She's a school teacher.
Oh my gosh. And she just applied for St. Thomas? That's
She just started putting resumes out literally all over the planet. I had a real estate job lined up in Morocco. I had a real estate job lined up in Fiji, and she almost got offered a job in the Cayman Islands, and this job offer here came through first, and so she snatched it, and here we are. That's how we got to the Caribbean, at least.
That's awesome. Okay, and then so when did real estate come into this?
We moved here from Florida, and I was a real estate agent in Florida, and I just sort of walked away from that. I still have my license in Florida, but I'm not doing really much with it. As you know, it's difficult. So we moved here. I just wasn't sure if I was going to work. We have rental properties in Florida that sort of pay the bills, so that, takes the pressure off of me having to work. So I took the first year off, and we went on a trip over to Puerto Rico, and I just fell in love with Puerto Rico, and like real estate's just in my veins. I can't help it. So the first morning when we woke up, and my wife was like, well, let's go to El Yunque and go hiking. I was like, actually, we have an appointment with the Realtor first. So I was like, as long as we're there, we might as well look at a little bit of real estate. I'd already been doing my research online. So we started poking around the island. And after 2 or 3 trips to Puerto Rico, we kind of narrowed down an area that we liked. And I ended up buying a house there that we are in the middle of renovating. That's going to be a vacation rental.
Before we get more into that house, I want to back up a little bit to when you were in Florida. You said you had a few rentals there that actually pay the bills. I mean, that right there is what, to me, seems like the key to financial freedom, is when you've got something that basically covers your expenses. Can you tell me how you got started with your first and second, and just kind of what that portfolio looks like now?
This is what I talk a lot about on my channel, is reaching financial independence through real estate. It's what I did. It's how I did it. And the key to success is so unsexy that it's hard to get people to pay attention. But my plan was, I just bought one house every year. And, you buy your first house, if you can house hack it, or buy a duplex. And then a year or 2 later, you buy the next house. And as you do that, the houses start to offset. At first, it just offsets your mortgage payment, so that you, after a year or 2, should be almost living for free or living for free. So then your savings rate should be able to about double. And then it gets easier and easier you have to do your first, depends on your income level, but most people have to start out by buying a house and then moving to the second house so they can do the 3% or the 5% downs. And then eventually you get to a place where if you're still working a job, plus the income from the real estate's coming in, you can sort of stay put and just start putting the 20-25% down to expand the portfolio. And that's how I did it.
So it sounds like at the time you had your real estate income, she had her teaching income. You bought the first place, you lived in it for a while, and then you were able to save some kind of smallish down payment or whatever the minimum was to acquire the second house and the mortgage was low enough in the first house that did you break even or?
Yeah, the key to success if you're starting out on the street, I went broke in 2008 and I lost everything. So I was starting from zero. So my wife had lived in Africa for 2 years and she taught there and they paid for her house and everything. This was before we met I didn't even know her, but she had saved up like $20,000 and we weren't married yet. And I had horrible credit from going broke in 2008. She wasn't a US citizen. We found instead of finding the biggest house we could afford, we found the smallest house we could afford to live in. Maybe not afford, the smallest house we could stand to live in. So we got this cute little 800 square foot house by the beach in Panama City Beach, and we bought that. And our mortgage payment, we got a guy, it was a house flipper that we bought it from, and he did owner financing on it for us so we could kind of get our financing figured out. Our mortgage payment was like $600 a month. So we actually, when we bought our second house, we bought a duplex and it was $125,000. And one side of the duplex paid the mortgage of $750 and the other side of the duplex was $750 and that paid our mortgage. So in our second year of this little plan, we were already living for free.
That's amazing. So did you stop there? Do you acquire a third?
Yeah, we got a third. The third house I bought was actually, it was a for sale by owner. And I went and knocked on the guy's door to try to get the listing. And he was so far below market value. I was like, I could sell this and make a lot more money for you. And he's like, I hate realtors. I don't want to deal with realtors. And I was like, well, then I have to buy it. So I ended up buying it from the guy. And then the next house we bought it's a townhouse, and that we had a tropical storm and his roof started leaking and flooding my house. And he lived in Alabama. I called him and he drove down. He's like, I'm so sick of this house. He's like, just write me a check for what I paid for it 8 years ago and you can have it. And I was like, there you go. And I wrote him a check. And
Wow.
so, yeah, so that's how I got that house. Then we have two more houses and now the house in Puerto Rico. So I have 7 total houses now.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. So at what point did you guys decide that you had enough property in the States and that you wanted to look elsewhere? Was it literally that day when you went to El Yunque to go hiking or?
It was really just more about the numbers and the market. I just felt like when we looked at the housing market in Puerto Rico, we kind of, after going broke in 2008, when we started buying houses in Florida, it was 2011 and it was right at the bottom of the market before things started to turn back up. And I kind of feel like Puerto Rico is where their market is the 2011 of Florida now. I mean, who knows what's going to happen in Puerto Rico? It could stay there forever. It could go down a little bit more. It could start to go up. I can't put my finger on it, but I know that the value that I got for the money was definitely worth getting into it.
I think that's a key thing if you do venture to purchase in Puerto Rico, because the market is so unpredictable. It may not go up. It's going kind of crazy now in certain areas, but that may not last. It's important to buy something that's going to cash flow for you so that if it doesn't work out, you can still rent it.
Yeah, I never buy property based on appreciation. Appreciation to me is a bonus. If it happens, it happens. I buy everything based on cash flow.
We learned that the hard way. Yes,
I
we have
learned it
our
by
own
going broke.
2008 story. Yeah.
And just real quick, the reason I went broke was I had a goal to be a millionaire by the time I was 30. And I didn't care if that meant I had $1 million of debt. I just needed $1 million of stuff in my brain to make that dream a reality. And I did it by 31. But the problem was I had $1.2 million in debt. And when the market crashed in 2008, everything was only worth 800. So my mortgage company wasn't making money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I learned the second time around was that you need to have like at least a 1 year reserve account to handle the payments through a crisis, and you need to have a higher equity in the properties. And that's the lesson that I learned.
So you moved to St. Thomas, you took a year off, sounds like, to kind of get the lay of the land and figure out your next move. Where did you start looking, and did you immediately gravitate to Puerto Rico? And then I want to know a little bit more about how you found that first house.
We started looking in St. Thomas, and we just decided that, we didn't know how long we would be here. We didn't know what the future held for us. And it's hard to get the properties here to pencil. I am selling real estate here, but I mean, the truth is that a lot of things aren't going to pencil here. So we didn't want to put our money here. And in on the lower end in the condo market, almost everything has to be paid in cash. They don't finance most of the condos here. And it was too big of a step. So when we started nosing around in Puerto Rico, the price point, it was just, I couldn't walk away from that price point.
Yeah, it's definitely cheaper there. So where did you end up buying specifically, and how did you find the house?
We ended up buying a house in Punta Santiago, which is near Humacao. It's in the Humacao area. The way we found it, when I was looking online, there was a house in the neighborhood that I found that we just fell in love with it. We went down there, we looked at the house, we loved the house, we loved the neighborhood, we loved the beach. And I couldn't agree on a price with the guy who was selling it. We were just too far apart on the price. And so I just kept looking in that neighborhood, and then another house popped up like almost literally across the street from the one that we wanted for a third of the price. It's a little bit smaller and it needed to be remodeled, but we already liked the area. We knew the area, we knew the neighborhood. So I made an offer on that house, and that's how we ended up in that area and buying that house.
Is this a gated community?
It is, yeah.
Okay, and so it sounds like you pretty much just put on your realtor hat and represented yourself,
Yeah.
and just contacted these sellers. Did you find them on Classificados online, or where'd you find them?
I think I did find it on Classificados, yeah.
Yeah. Did you do any driving around and calling off signs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of the above,
All
everything.
of it. Yeah, awesome. And so your wife, she's totally on board with this, given your history of rentals and.
Yeah, she was on board then. This thing has drug on, and because my Spanish is almost zero, so she has been put into more of a hands-on with the remodel than she has been with a lot of our other projects and dealing with contractors and everybody else. So she has established a new rule that I am not allowed to buy any more houses in Spanish-speaking countries until this one is done or I learn Spanish.
I love your wife. I haven't even
Yeah.
met her. She just sounds like a fantastic spirit.
Yeah, she is fiery.
Oh, that's great. So her Spanish has probably been really critical through this project. Tell me a little bit about the transaction. How did that go for you? Did you get a lawyer? Was it pretty smooth?
Yeah, the hardest part was finding the property and negotiating it. Obviously I didn't have representation, so the listing agent, after we agreed on the price, wasn't getting the contract back to me. We were waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to just keep moving forward with what I've got to do, and she can just keep dragging her feet. And so I contacted a home inspector, and I ordered the home inspection. I sent the home inspector over to the house, and so she had to meet the home inspector there. And the home inspector gave her the third degree, and she was just like, what are you doing? Like, she kind of tipped her hand that she was kind of trying to see if she could wait out and get a better offer, because the phone was still ringing on the property.
So Puerto Rico.
Yeah. So everything was negotiated and signed. I had my lawyer translate the contract. We'd been back and forth with revisions to the contract 2 or 3 times, and I signed on the dotted line, and I was just waiting for the seller to sign and give it back to me, and it wasn't coming back. So the seller, or the home inspector, was just like, this guy is a realtor, you're a realtor. You should at least give him, as a peer, the respect that you would expect, not to mention that just any buyer who's negotiated a contract should get the contract back. And she really kind of gave her the third degree, and all of a sudden the contract came back. And then
That's great.
so that's how that worked out.
You got the family involved.
Yeah. So that was really the hardest part. Once that happened, we paid cash for the house. I pulled a little bit of money out of one of my properties in Florida. And so we didn't have to deal with any banks in Puerto Rico. I get the most questions about what about banks in Puerto Rico? And I can't tell anybody. I've got mixed reviews I did call some banks in Puerto Rico and just decided it wasn't worth it. I just would pay cash for it. Once the contract was delivered, I had a good attorney, and she did all the title work, and she handled everything from there out. And 2 weeks later, we were at the closing table.
So tell me about the experience once you closed, you got the keys, you went in there, you started making plans to remodel it. Are you going to make it a long-term rental or a vacation rental?
I think I'm going to do a vacation rental. There is like a niche in the market that I think I may have discovered. I don't know if I should tell everyone on the planet, but
Oh,
I don't know.
well, you can be vague.
Well, no, there's a lot of people that go to Puerto Rico and they want a house for a month or two while they look for a long-term rental or while they look for something to buy.
Yeah.
And so they need something furnished. So they need an Airbnb type of property, but Airbnbs are super expensive and they don't want to get into a long-term lease and then they don't have their own furniture yet. So I may kind of play around with this idea and do 1 to 2 month rentals with sort of a hybrid price between what a short-term rental would be and what a long-term rental would be.
How far is this property from Palmas del Mar?
15 minutes.
Oh, I think you'll have a fantastic stream of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So what level are you remodeling it to? Just sort of a basic, nice, you come from the mainland, you're comfortable level, or what are you thinking?
I'd like to go above and beyond in my rent, especially for Airbnb type properties. People want to go on vacation and they want something nicer than where they came from. That's why I hate hotels. I never understood this mindset when people like go, oh, it's like a hotel. I don't understand that, but I guess it feels nicer than their house.
Yeah.
So I do quartz countertops. I try to dummy proof everything so that, if they're, I plan for girls dancing on the countertops and like I've got enough vacation rentals that I've seen it all, and I know that if you spend a little bit more money on things like quartz countertops and very expensive sinks and faucets that don't break and don't leak and better appliances that last a little longer, I think in the long run you get your money back.
Yeah, so the spike heels don't damage anything. Good
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I once represented a listing that had a pole in the kitchen on the
Oh
island.
yeah.
Don't know why, but
Well, in one of my rental, I have a rental that it's a tiki themed house. I call it the tiki house, and the whole house is done in a tiki theme. And when I did it to beat a code, you had to have power in the island, and I was going to have to run a pole to the island from the ceiling. And I was like, "There's no way I'm putting a pole in the middle of my tiki house. I know exactly what's going to happen with this thing." So I had to like bore out the concrete and the foundation just to avoid that because I knew exactly what would happen.
So you've got your plans, and tell me about your experience with contractors. I presume you don't need an architect, you're just working with some general contractors to get the work
Yeah.
done.
I
Let's
don't
hear
know.
it.
I don't know if this was a good idea or a bad idea, but I'm too far in to change course now. There's just kind of one guy who's like the neighborhood contractor, handyman. He's done all of the houses in the neighborhood. And it's funny, the guy who I couldn't agree on the price with on the first house, I've become friends with him, and he has given me contractor introductions and a guy to cut the grass, and he's helping me try to find a guy to do a pool. So this contractor had done the remodel in his house, which we loved. And so he's just kind of a one-man show. And I don't know, the main excuses are COVID excuses, but it's been a challenge. Nothing happens unless I'm going over there. I threaten to come once a month just because I know if he thinks I'm coming, something's going to happen, but it's been very slow.
You're managing this project from another island. So
Yeah.
it sounds like that does kind of add to the slowness of it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think I'm going to do a video of just the miscommunications that have happened in the house with things that I thought were going to be done one way that ended up getting done another way. And if I was there, they wouldn't have happened. And you just have to accept it as part of trying to do it from afar, I guess. So
Is this your first long distance remodel?
my first, but I actually have 2 going on right now, but it's my first that I started. Yeah.
Where's the other one?
I kept my house in Florida that I was living in, and it flooded during Hurricane Sally. So I'm in the middle of that. How long ago was that? October? I don't know. That's been like 5-6 months. I've been trying to get that house put back together, and it's still torn apart. So I'm trying to get both of these houses done. So I've been flying back and forth to Florida and to Puerto Rico and trying to do business here. And I've been running around like a chicken with its head cut off.
That's a pretty busy retirement.
Yeah, that's what I say. Plus I have two YouTube channels, plus I'm selling real estate here, plus we're contemplating starting a property management company to go with the real estate in St. Thomas. So yeah, I don't feel I felt more retired last year than this year.
Might be time to simplify.
Well, I've just done a couple of videos on my YouTube channel. I'm changing the name of the FIRE movement, and I'm just waiting for it to catch on. I'm changing it to Financial Independence Recreational Employment.
I just watched that video and I totally agree with it. I mean, I know so many people who retire and they just can't stay still. They're just
Yeah.
always doing stuff. And honestly, that's what keeps you alive. I mean, if you just go sit in a corner, you're going to die. So you might as
Yeah.
well keep busy doing things you love to do.
Yeah. I literally live on one of the most beautiful islands on the planet, but I can't just go sit on the beach every day. It's just not part of my DNA.
Yeah, and that's something interesting for people to think about. We have these romantic notions of, oh, retire early and I'll just do that. And people get bored and you need to stay active, but without losing all your money.
Yeah, I think people just see retirement as the ultimate goal, but they don't assume or they don't put any thought into what happens when you get there. When I graduated from college, we're like in my cap and gown, and one of my friends was like, "Woohoo, we graduated!" He's like, "What are you gonna do?" And I was like, "I don't know. I actually hadn't put 2 seconds of thought into it." I was like, "What are you gonna do?" He's like, "I'm moving to Yellowstone Park." I was like, "Great, I'm coming with you." So it's like you work so hard to get to the goal, but you don't think about what happens when you get there.
Right.
It's the same thing with my goal where I wanted to be a millionaire. That was a stupid goal. That's where I learned that your goal setting needs to be put a little more thought into it, because having $1 million of debt was a horrible goal to attain.
But you fix that now.
Yeah.
So back to Puerto Rico. So you've got this project going on. COVID is kind of dragging it out. Sounds like you have to go there maybe once a month just to kind of prod the situation.
Yeah.
Do you see an end in sight?
We're getting really close now. I was supposed to go last weekend, but we couldn't get flights to work out. My wife we kind of try to go on my wife's work schedule, being a teacher. So we were going to go for President's Weekend, but we couldn't get a good flight. Anyway, so I think we're going to go for her spring break. And I'm hoping that it's furniture buying trip. I think we're about to that point now. Most of the dirty, dusty things are done. Floors are done. Cabinets are in, all that kind of stuff. So I think we're going to get to the fun part of putting the house together, buying the furniture, and hopefully getting it to make money. It's been a year, almost exactly a year and 2 weeks since we closed on the house. And the backyard, we still can't find a pool contractor, so the backyard is just a mess, but it's just grass. But so we still have a lot to do, but I think to the point where we can put a person in there that will pay something to stay there.
Have you been able to stay on budget or has it gone over?
Yeah, we're pretty close on budget. Yeah, the budget hasn't been a budget buster.
And then have you found a property manager to host and maintain it for you?
No, I'm gonna try to do it myself. The key to self-managing is having a good cleaning person, having a good handyman. And that's the reason that if I think about how much income I've lost of a year that I thought it would be rented, then I'm definitely over budget. But in the long run, keeping a good relationship with this contractor who's taking a long time, he still is doing good work, and he is hopefully going to be my handyman, because like I say, he's kind of the neighborhood handyman already. So keeping him on and keeping him happy to stay on as a handyman to fix things. And I think what I'm going to do is try to find, I haven't even looked yet, but if there's any kind of an actual cleaning company that does clean, instead of just trying to find a person or two people that do it on the side, I want to try to find an actual company.
Well, I can't wait to see the big reveal.
Me neither.
What would you say to people who are thinking about retiring in Puerto Rico?
I probably will retire to Puerto Rico. I'm kind of trying to set it up so that when I retire, I think we're going to buy one more house and we're looking at Spain. So I kind of want to split my time between Florida, Puerto Rico, and Spain. If you just wanted to retire in Puerto Rico, I think it's a great place to retire. I think the cost of living is comparable probably to what we had in Florida. Groceries are probably comparable. Things like wine and liquor are probably comparable. Eating out in restaurants is less. Like where we live, it's kind of, I don't know if you would call it like the country. It's, we're a little bit farther out of the city, so it's a little less touristy. You need a little bit more Spanish to get by, and restaurants and bars and things are a little bit cheaper. But for normal cost of living, like gasoline and cars and things are all pretty comparable. But the housing, I think, is the big kicker. You can get a lot more house for the money if you wanted to retire in Puerto Rico. You've got the tropical climate. You've got, a laid back lifestyle. You've got golf courses. If you could be somewhere like Palmas, and still feel like you're in the U.S. if you wanted to. That's why I wanted to be a little bit more out and be a little more in the Puerto Rico. So if you've got the mountains in the middle of the country, you've got a little bit of everything. It's pretty diverse. So as for retirement, I think it's a great place.
So you say that for compared to Florida, the cost of living is pretty similar. Like maybe some things are more, some things are less, but you think it
Yeah.
all kind of evens out.
Things are less expensive in the Panhandle than they are in Miami also. So I came from probably one of the most affordable beach towns in Florida. So I'm comparing that to Puerto Rico.
Okay, now this is a little bit of a weird question, but it comes up. A lot of people are really afraid of bugs and spiders and creepy crawlies moving into a climate like Puerto Rico's. What's your experience with that?
Well, it's funny. I couldn't find my good earphones before we got on this call, and I was like, maybe they're in my car. And I ran down to my car to look in my car, and it's full of ants.
The car?
Yes, I
Fire
don't
ant?
know. I no, just little tiny ants. I don't know. I just was in and out of that. So as soon as I get off this call, I'm going to go spray bug spray in my car. Um, we've seen some interesting bugs in the house in Puerto Rico, but nothing too scary. I mean, being from Florida, we already have big cockroaches and snakes and lizards. I have become probably one of the best lizard catchers in the Caribbean. If I see a lizard running across the floor within 2.4 seconds, I will safely have him captured in a cup and released into the wild. So my lizard catching skills have definitely gotten good. But yeah, they don't bother me. The only thing that I don't like are the termites. They freak me out every time I see the huge termite balls in the tree. And one thing that I've heard in Puerto Rico, in the spring, the termites all leave the termite balls and they fly around. And if you don't have screens, they'll like move into your couch or whatever wood they can find. They ate the cabinets in my house that I'm remodeling. They looked fine, and I started to peel off sort of like the plastic laminate, and all of the wood behind all the cabinets was just eaten by termites.
Oh my gosh. Wow. You don't think about that stuff in Puerto Rico, but
Yeah.
yeah, they're there. So you said you're thinking of retiring there yourself. Have you picked out an area that you like, or are you still open?
Yeah, I don't know what we will do. We love the house that we're remodeling. It's going to depend on how much money the house we're remodeling makes. If it's making a lot of money, I could buy another house in that neighborhood or in that area, or I wouldn't mind to get up in the mountains a little bit. I don't know. We've got time to figure that out, I guess.
Well, Jeff, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to, share your adventures with us. And I will go ahead and put your contact information in the description below so people can find your channel and see all the cool videos you've done on Puerto Rico. And yeah, thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Then I will cut.
Perfect.
Jeff, this was great. I love hearing about your story.
I was going to say this in the interview and I forgot to say it, but like when I went to Puerto Rico, I was watching your videos and now here I am on your channel. So I regret that I didn't get to put that in the show, but I did watch your videos.
That is so cool. And if I can splice that in there somehow, I will.
Good. Yeah.
I love a good edit.
The student has become not the master, but
the teacher.
But it's good to be on your channel. So that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.